Good morning, and welcome back to another episode with the grace of God of Who Am I? I say that because we've been having some technical issues. I posted what I thought was a perfectly good episode yesterday. Turned out that it had some deep audio difficulties. I had done a test. Originally, did a little 30-second test, listened to it, said, that sounds okay. But somewhere in the middle of it, my little static, whiny static audio. So hopefully today is not a repeat. If it is, you won't hear this. If it isn't, you don't even care what I'm saying. So let's jump right in. I'm sorry I lost yesterday's episode because my intention from now on, I think, is to kind of make the conversation a little bit bigger. In early days, I have sort of awkwardly sometimes, and not awkwardly sometimes, I have been able to pull together this package of information, this little package of information that just talks about certain aspects of reality and ourselves that I think matter. I think they matter politically, geopolitically, economically, reality, the state of reality, not just the state of reality, absolutely not the state of reality, but the nature of reality, the processes of reality, the 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 systems of reality. Those matter. The form, the state of it changes all the time, and that confuses us. We have within ourselves, I believe, this is my perspective, this is part of my little story. Oh, let me finish my thought. Previously, I have been trying to capture the whole thing in every episode, you know? And I'm going to let go of that here pretty soon because I'm going to assume that somebody in my audience, if I have an audience by that point, then they will have graduated to a certain level where they're ready to start, so we get an understanding of the laws of the universe and what we're dealing with ourselves as biotechnology and our species, our common experience in general through history. What are the patterns and the spirit that we are going to be looking at all of this in is that all is well. We're not going to be picking it apart from an outrage position, from a scanning the horizon to see who's to blame for this, especially living. Who is the perpetrator of the conspiracy now? Because this conspiracy has kind of been handed down for more than just the lifetime of any one individual or set of individuals, unless they're, the kinds of beings that are alive and vigorous with their intentions for well over 100 years. And in some ways, it's been going on longer than that. And no. It's a pattern. It's a field event. It's a common thing. There is a common experience that mankind has with himself, with one another, with the story of ourselves. It's sort of like when I was younger, I used to imagine it this way. I realize I haven't quite finished my thought, but as far as my intention is now to assume that you kind of know where I'm going at, the main points of my thesis. And we're just going to jump in. It's what I've been trying to do all morning. Just jump in and start talking about who are I? Who are I? Who are we? Who am I? We have a kind of common experience. And the way I used to think about it was to imagine. So if you think that just a snapshot of current events awards you an understanding of the picture of what's going on, you have way too limited of a scope. Because it's more like this: the whole of history moving through time is sort of like a movie. Think about it as a 3D movie, forever and ever and ever. It just keeps on going. And this 3D movie, a snapshot of current events, even a snapshot of a couple of years of current events only, is sort of like taking a snapshot out of a movie and assuming from this picture that you're looking at that you understand the depth of the movie. Way more things happened, even if it's a whole scene, a whole little scene that you take out. Now, that's not really quite fair, because with a movie you could extrapolate a lot from a scene. But it could be a dream scene, or a flashback, or a daydream, or you really don't know how it fits in the movie, even if you saw a whole scene. Eternity is a kind of a funny thing. We are forever in this story. And the question we ask every day, and it's going to be a conversation forum someday, where regulars of the program, having gotten up to speed, at least with my point of view, now they got to add their own point of view, and let's see what kind of amazing, wonderful, exciting, things we can add up to. We live in a culture of largely subtraction consciousness. People are trying to decide which thought is the right one to think, which one is the right, and the fact is you can enter them all, enter all the thoughts. You don't have to be afraid of any of them, because the spirit of them is really what matters. And if you're focused on the vibration of things, how things feel, not just what they look like. And I promise you, you have an inner guidance. And this inner guidance, actually, that's a misnomer in a way, because the way I see it, the inner guidance system that we have embedded in our biotechnology, you could say it if you want to say it that way. Or if you want to say it with some kind of mystical language, you can do that too. But this inner guidance that you have is an aspect of your own anatomy. That's how cool we are. It's a cosmic vibrational aspect of your very own anatomy. But it's more than that too. Everything is what you see, and more than that too. It's just adding. The reason that we subtract is so that with our little human consciousnesses, we can focus in on any one thing clearly. If you see too many things at once, it starts to lose all meaning unless you have some way of tracking it, some way of organizing it. You can see the allness of the eternal story of history of mankind if you see it as envision it and encapsulate it first as a story. I think that's how come we call it history, so that we can conceive of this thing that we are embedded in, and what's the meaning of it. So remember, the name of the show is Who Am I? It also, I ask the question, where did we come from? I postulate a possibility that perhaps we were genetically modified. And if we were genetically modified, it implies that somebody genetically modified us. Somebody with somewhat better understanding of genetics than we have. we're starting to, with our little CRISPR, genetic editing technology, we are starting to get an understanding, a conceptual understanding at least, of what it would be like or how it could be possible to do what. There's an implication of some twiddling on our genetic structure. In chromosome number 2, it appears that it is a fused chromosome. Now, whether these two chromosomes just jumped on each other and then redundancies fell away, telomere to telomere, they glommed onto one another. Redundancies just fell away on both sides spontaneously. This, luckily, strengthened the fusion so that it didn't unfuse. And just by happenstance, fortunately, this fusion created most of the volume of the neocortex, which is that aspect of the brain that you could argue makes us human. And as a matter of fact, the geneticists who did this study over 30 years ago, it's kind of been moldering away over in the archives, if you will, over at pnas.org. You can find the article. I do not think that the authors of that article had an axe to grind or an agenda to prove. I think they just looked at it and said, holy cow, this is really interesting. We will do our work and we will leave it to others to do their work. Which isn't that a great way to be? Because human beings, as it turns out, have a desire, a tendency, a natural tendency to flow to the specialized. We want to specialize. Each one of us wants to look deeply into the furthest reaches of reality, whether it's into a microscope or out into the cosmos, or as an engineer, work on the physical problems of the collective. All of that kind of stuff. We yearn to do that. We want to do that. The problem is when in general, our general understanding of general reality and how it comes into being is not secure. We are a people who, practically every one of us has been raised with a different cosmology, a different story telling us, no, it's this way. No, God is this. No, God is that. No, the Spirit is yada yada and only through Jesus, or there is no God. It's all just processes. It's all very confusing unless you start adding it up. If you start consciously adding these things up, they start adding up to something, especially if you come at it from a spirit of, if it feels good, it is good, and if it feels dark and scary, then there's something off, If you come to your cosmology and it is dark and scary, then there's something in the frequency that's off in you as you evaluate it. We're going to talk about the meaning of your negative emotions. Every day we're going to build on this story. I have a total picture of how all of the things that I have added together, how they add together. I recognize that mine is only a single viewpoint. And isn't that amazing? Because there's almost 8 billion of us. And so there are that many viewpoints. And while that can be scary when you realize that a lot of your fellow human beings are sort of devolving into an angry position and a frustrated position and a frightened position, because angry, frustrated, frightened people, desperate people do desperate things. And we may hit a moment where it is desperate times. And I know that at some points on the globe, It already is. Some of our fellow human beings are in desperate times. They are in famine, they are in war. All of this preventable, every single bit of it. Now that we have grown to the global beings that we are, it's hard for us to look around the world and recognize that there isn't anything that we couldn't logistically get done. And so why isn't it happening? There are other reasons preventing it, as in our own selves, our own emotions, our own skewed skewed I'm thinking of summations, people who they're skewed conclusions. I don't know how to understand completely some political positions. From a broader perspective, I do understand it though. And so we're going to dial back to a broader perspective where we can understand the phenomenon that we are witnessing, both in our individual lives, both playfully and small. We will at times brush and touch upon the greater understandings of the forces and movements around us, the politics, the history, the meaning of our times, our end times. I don't for a minute believe that it is end times. However, I humbly hope that it is the end times for some of our past ways of looking at ourselves and the world. It is time for some of those old patterns to end. I'm talking about things like war. There is no instance where war could possibly be the answer to the problem. War is the problem. War can't be the answer to the problem. Why do we keep devolving that way? Well, I have my theories. And if you listen to my program regularly over time, hopefully you'll get a grasp on what my viewpoint is. Now, then you add in your viewpoint, and then you add in other viewpoints, and excuse me, if I had felt that coming, I would have paused it. So, I'd say let's get started, but we are well started. The general place where we spend our hour and a half is in the question, who am I? And there are so many ways to come at this that it's easily I can do this for an hour and a half every morning for, every morning that it makes sense. Occasionally it doesn't, timing wise, and where I am, proximity to equipment, and all that kind of stuff. The question is, who am I? And the answer can come from any number of directions. Now, I had a really good program yesterday. Let me start the way I started yesterday. We're going to be coming at this two-pronged. Well, maybe more prongs than that. But both from... We are dissecting the very nature of reality. And fundamentally speaking, like, what is the foundational reality of the reality-making machine that we are co-creating with? It's actually an absolutely wondrous universe that we live in. And I think that's probably my whole point. Let me think about this for a second. For a minute, I had a vision of a book. it was a book that I wanted to write, and it was me envisioning it as a book was the only way that I could imagine how I could describe this potential future I could see for humanity. It was just the coolest book. And you know what? Maybe I describe it here in my show over time, and somebody writes the book. Oh, I don't know. Wouldn't that be terrible if I gave away my best idea? I don't know. It had to do with our future, though. Our future, what our future can look like if we lived in a world where people understood how freaking reality comes into being. I think it's as simple as that. But with everybody being raised differently with all kinds of hokey pokey, superstitious nonsense intertwined with some truth and family traditions and guilt and negative emotions and fear and, whatever is all in this toxic brew that we are swimming in, this blessed brew that we are swimming in. However you want to look at it, there's so many ways you can look at it. All valid. All valid. That couldn't possibly be Bob at 6:46, tiptoeing past my... I'm paranoid. All valid, and yet they only are valid when you add them all together, when you recognize that this is my view, and the view, the with a capital T, the view of existence, of reality, includes everybody's view. We get into problems when we think that we are right and everyone else is wrong. That's where we're wrong. We are right. Everyone is right. Every single person is right. There is a deep and profound rightness within the being of every single human walking the planet, no matter how monstrous their behavior in any given moment appears. There is no differentiation in a way. And then, of course, there's tremendous differentiation. How people are acting, how they are being, there's a great deal of difference there. But as far as at the core of who we are, every single one of us is right. Now, this is what skews the picture. So if you're wondering, why, if everyone is so freaking right, how come all of those people are so wrong? There's two things that skew this picture. And probably one of these things is helping to cause the other thing. The two things that skew the picture is what state, what frequency are you in as you are thinking your thoughts and gazing at your picture, at the view, What frequency are you plugged into? In other words, how do you feel? What emotional state of being are you in? If you are in a negative state of being, then there is a toxic, there is a taint to your viewpoint. So it's like 100% of the truth is still there, but then you add this ingredient and it twists everything just a little bit. So now all the information is still there. It's still there. But you can't just take impulses off of that directly now. You can't just assume that it's true, that it's right. And of all things, and I believe that when you come at it from a negative emotion and you experience that twisting skew, somehow it also facilitates you imagining that you're the only one who's right. So the two things that skew you are being in a state of negative emotion, and the second one is thinking that you are the only one who's right. When you are right in the context of everyone is right, it's sort of like I love this story because I don't have notes telling me to say this story. Just every time when I get to this point in the narrative, it makes sense to tell this analogy of the blind man describing the elephant. And if you think about it, every single one of them, if they were adamant about them being right and everybody else being wrong, then now they're wrong. Because everyone is saying, oh, elephant is like a rope, like a snake, like a sail, like a tree, like a wall. And as far as it goes, every one of them is right. But if any one of them goes into a state of negative emotion and declares that he is the only one who's right and all of the others must be wrong, then you can see the problem there. And that's what human beings do. And the question is, why do we do that? Why do we do that? And then the question is, who are we? Where did we come from? How does our equipment work? What are we up to? What has been going on in the great movie we call history? What's the meaning of it? And what's the meaning of it right now? What's going on right now? And what is standing in the way of what's standing between where we are right now and the vision that I can see of where mankind could go if we understood who we were and worked with the system instead of cattywampus against the system, imagining all kinds of weird things about each other. And, I don't care how we're very polarized right now, and we've gotten quite frightened of our neighbor. And I know that my former political party is quite terrified of the political across the aisle because they think that the other side has lost their minds. It's angry. It's and actually all of this is a storm brewing. It really is. And I wouldn't downplay it. On the one hand, it is magnificent and huge, epic. How many other words could I use? That this pattern that is playing out in front of us. It is monstrous in its divinity, in its hugeness. And yet, when I say it with the monstrous hugeness and the divinity and all that kind of stuff, it makes you think that I want you to, clutch your garments and wail in terror and all that, which I do not want you to do, because ultimately you are way bigger than we have ever imagined. We're really going to be okay. But I think it is important for us to understand what's actually happening. I believe that the political goings on right now, it's an energy event. All of the emotions involved, it's emotions. It is an energy event. We keep thinking that we can solve this through our judicial processes and our, actually filming facts, filming people saying things, and then trying to hold them accountable in a screen against a backdrop of common sense and are you effing kidding me, kind of a thing. And it's not going to work, because what's actually happening is that the unsustainable is not sustaining. And as we try to grasp and cling to it, as it is passing away, its vibration is, calming down and actually shifting to other forms. The fundamental truth about this reality-making machine that we abide in is that it is a morphogenetic field of epic capability. I mean, beyond epic. It falls way short of the ultimate capability of this reality-making machine. Now, at some levels, a lot of the reality making is well on a path of momentum that, you join it, but you don't change it. You don't jump into the sun and try to be something else. You're just sun food if you do that. There are hierarchies of flow and pattern. But here on planet Earth, there are things going on. The question is, who am I? We're going to be talking about it always in reference to source energy, because ultimately the discussion is trying to be about how reality comes into being altogether. What is this reality thing, and how do I function as a human being? What is the meaning of the people around me melting down and losing their minds? Because it happens, and it's going to happen, and it's going to keep happening. Even though I know that all is well, it would be ever so much easier if more of us understood that all is well. In the midst of the maelstrom, if you understand what's real and what isn't real, and then you can hold on to the real and let the not real pass, it would be a lot less scary as things happen around us. Institutions are going to be falling. Stupid institutions that we've been supporting just because that's what we've been doing for the last however long. Long past the time when we actually, our understandings have gotten past our even needing to organize in that way. I don't know if that made any sense. It made sense as I passed through it, but whether or not it made sense from the outside, I don't know. Usually I don't start with this. I usually end with this, and the last bunch of times I have not made it to this. So I think we're going to start with this, the very first place that I go past my opening screen. I am past the half-hour mark, so I think it's time to move past the opening screen. I talk about a concept called cymatics. And cymatics is the study of the relationship between vibration and form. And part of my thesis, my whole discussion of who am I throw in my bit, and then I invite you to add in your bit and the bit of any gurus or teachers or models or heroes that you have ever had and their thoughts. Let's add it all in, because this is a universe of addition. It is not a universe of subtraction. You actually can't subtract out of the whole picture. You can choose to focus where you want. You don't have to focus right on the darkness and then expect to feel good. You can focus wherever you want. But if you are imagining, envisioning the whole picture, you can't subtract anything out of it. It is all divinely there. It is all in divine addition. I call it addition consciousness. And I advise this as an individual, as you're trying to make sense of your world. Don't pick and choose at first. At the time when you're young, it would be great when you're young if you could do this. If we could teach our children to do this when they were young, although we'd have to have models and ways for them to channel we got a long way to go before we could really teach our children to do this, but we need to teach them to do this. Add everything in. Add it at when you're young. If you don't know what to do with a piece of information, I had a place in my consciousness, I just called it the place where everything goes. I don't know what to do with that, but there's a room that I've got where everything goes, where I don't have to pick and choose, where I don't have to say, does this go in there? Does this qualify as being good and I want to keep it, or bad and I want to throw it away? there's a place where you can't throw it away, because it existeth unto the universe. And there is an allness to the pattern. There is an allness to us all. I call this aspect of us the Almighty. And the Almighty includes us. The Almighty is not an otherness to worship beyond ourselves. The Almighty is the allness with which we are all participating. And the service that I want to serve as I come into this space, and for a while I'm just going to discuss it with myself. I know that there's a lot of consciousness out there that is rising, that is already picking up on every element perhaps that I will introduce, but I put it together in my own special way, and you, wherever you are, put together your package in your own special way, and then we all dance together. We all dance together. We never make war upon one another. Never, 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 never. War is never the answer. And I know you may think that, well, yeah, but how about when the guy's already dropping bombs on me? What the hell am I supposed to do with that? Well, I'll tell you what the problem is. The problem is our lack of understanding. That's what's causing that guy to drop bombs on you to begin with. And it's more than that. I have more to this thesis, and actually this seems the perfect and natural time to introduce it. It's a little bit of physicality within this esoteric philosophical discussion that we have every morning, or every morning I can manage, or sometimes afternoon editions or evening editions. But it has to do with the centralization of our power structure, which I believe is being caused by the centralization of our energy structure. We are forced to link up with the great human machine because we don't have access to individual power supplies that would allow us to go truly off the grid, way, way, way off the grid. Like, just go off and grow our own food in our own way, on our own little farm, plugged into nature the way our heart and our impulses, allow, not having to worry about, we could go back to being a lot more agrarian. I realize that I don't have the capability of describing every position on the grid, nor would it actually turn out well if anyone took my pattern and then tried to follow it from the outside. But I can kind of see what this would all look like if each and every one of us was following their bliss, if there was a clean, not renewable, but not renewable. That's doesn't describe this energy source. Clean, free, sustainable energy source right at the location wherever you need it. Wherever the appliance is, wherever the technology you want to plug into the source of energy is, we can do it. Conceptually, you've got to understand the shape and nature of reality, source energy itself, who you are, how we're dreaming this into being, how answers are even found to problems that existeth, the way you find solutions or answers to, I'm going to air quote, problems, is a human being gazes at the problem, takes the hit of the emotion, feels that, ooh, I don't like that. That's the step one moment that Abraham talks about. Step two is source answers. Source answers with the vibration that is, it's sort of the implicate positive to the negative that you just felt. Now go find that one, and from its impulses, in faith and expectation that answers will come, that answers have been found, now you follow thoughts and impulses that will lead you to the actions that produce the solutions. That's kind of the way it happens. Step 1, 2, 3. Step 1, life causes you to ask. Step 2, source answers. Step 3, you gotta get into a state of allowance so that you can allow that good thing you just asked for to happen. And it doesn't just, I'm going to air quote again, happen. It doesn't just happen. It happens as you follow your thoughts and impulses and co-create with the universe around you, who is following their impulses from the same things that they look at that they don't like. And we're just not understanding how the equipment works, because we think what we're supposed to do is scan the horizon for anything that troubles us and zero in on it and then worry it to death, you know, when actually that way of doing it sort of backfires a little bit, because whatever you're looking at and whatever state of being you are in as you are looking at it is actually very subtly creating that which you are looking at in the spirit of which you are looking at it in. That's how come the more you look at problems and are pissed off about them and angry and frightened about them, the more you end up creating more things to be angry and pissed off and frightened about. The answer comes when you realize the grace and magnificence of this morphogenetic field universe that we exist in, that we live in. So I put up this picture because this is these are cymatic patterns, and they've been created by some sort of digital device. You pipe a pipe of frequency into this device, and it's creating these patterns. Different frequency, different pattern, different colors. I'm not sure what in this device is causing the colors, whether it's volume could be causing color, or whether it's high or low tones. I have no idea how this works. But these are cymatic patterns. And these are also cymatic patterns. And the man who invented this field of inquiry, this field of study, this discipline, if you will, he started with a plate, like an electric plate, a metal plate that he could pipe a frequency through. And he put a granular medium on top of the plate and then pipe a frequency through, and a pattern would appear on the plate, upper right, lower left. That's what that is. That's the metal plate with some sort of tan, light-colored granular medium. And as you change the frequency, the pattern changes. As you increase the frequency, the pattern changes, but it gets more complex. It gets more and more complex. So this is why I put this up. Oh, upper left and lower right, those are also cymatic patterns. This is to illustrate it is true. We live in a vibrational universe. We really, really, really do. And the vibration of the field around us is primary. The vibration comes first, and then the pattern changes. And right now, you might be holding on to patterns that are melting away because they cannot be sustained. In reality, they cannot sustain. You can't keep killing something and have it continue to live, you know, that sort of thing. You can't keep pulling at a dry well and drink, you know, and not be thirsty or whatever. What sort of sage, old-timey sayings can I make up? So, who are you right now, and how do you see the world? I believe we are a binary system. I mentioned this yesterday, but nobody listened to that one because it was so whiny and staticky and horrible. Whoever probably started to try to listen to it had to turn it off, and I took it down, so it's not there anymore. But you are a binary system, and at the most fundamental level of reality, the binary system that you are is that you are the Planck field coming into manifestation. You are the formless coming into form. And so your primary nature actually is the formless. So when you ask yourself the question, who am I? I conceive of it this way. You've got this plug. It's like a plug. Your I am, fill in the blank. It's a plug. How you answer that question is a plug. And where are you plugging it in? Are you plugging it into the formless, or are you plugging it into the form? Because if you're plugging it into the form primarily, you're probably a nervous person, and you're very you're keenly watching the material manifestation because you have identified yourself as form, and as you have noticed, form is always changing. Bodies made of meat are very vulnerable. There's all kinds of sadness and suffering and danger. Have you watched the news? Have you read anything about history? Blah, 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 blah. Yes, it's all true. We live in an amazingly dangerous world. But the good news is that you're actually made of stuff that cannot be harmed. And how you are identifying is really important about how you see the world. Now, this brings me at this point to the 5 kleshas, which are, they're from Buddhist philosophy. And these 5 kleshas are considered to be the root cause of all suffering. And to a point, I would absolutely agree with this. Not knowing what is real, grasping and clinging to the unreal, being afraid of the unreal and recoiling from it, identifying with an imaginary self, and fear of death. And all of that stuff, I believe, comes from plugging your little plug into the wrong thing. When you answered your I am, you actually are leaning more towards I am my temporary self, as opposed to understanding that who you really are, really, 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 in your actual form, in physicality, what you actually are is a Planck field that cannot be destroyed. And you, as a being, you are a center of consciousness that you will be at the center of for the rest of all eternity, all existence. You cannot not be. And depending on which one of these 2 aspects of yourself you're identifying with, are you identifying with your formless, or are you identifying with your form? If you would more, well, and you aren't. So a lot of people who talk about this, who talk about the higher self, and who talk about, this system of being that we are, and they tend to vilify the ego side. And we are a binary system. We are the general, the broader perspective, the greater self, also known, aka, as the inner being, which I mentioned earlier. It's kind of a misnomer, because when you talk about inner being, it sounds like a smaller thing that's just you, when in actual fact, it is the information that connects you to the entire rest of the broader universe. So you are both of these things. Obviously, you are your physical body. Look at yourself. You can look at, you have form, you have at least a mind that sees, even if your eyes don't, you are both of these selves, and you both of these selves work together to create the expression of who you are. It's so magnificent. It's amazing and magnificent. And every single one of us is made this way. Every one of us has this inner being, has this broader perspective. If we would learn how to operate it, if we had a user's manual, for instance, when we came into this world, if every household had a user's manual sitting on it, explaining the meaning of your positive and negative emotions. First of all, know that you are a being who was created to be happy. You are meant to be happy with intermittent, short, sporadic periods of discomfort as you recognize things that could be better. And then in faith, lean that direction, take the impulses and thoughts associated with leaning that direction and, flow into that better space. Create that better thing. Interact that better way. Instead, we notice something we don't like and then just stand there and point at it and scream and cry. Another way to understand a lot of this is to know that your focus and your attention is, I see it as literally the currency of the universe, is your focus and your attention. And you are actually a being of light. And what you are looking at and how you're feeling as you are looking at what you're looking at is the indication of where you are going. So if you're feeling good as you look at whatever you're looking at and think about what you're thinking about and interact the way you interact, then you're going places that you want to go. If you are feeling bad as you take your actions, then you're likely messing things up more than you are helping to organize or assist or make better or more coherent. You're causing chaos rather than coherence. Oh, wow. As I speak, there are so many things. They just open up to me as I see, oh, this is related to this, is related to this, is related to this, and what's the whole point? Why? I mean, you could talk about this for days, and are you just spinning philosophical yarnage, or, are you really getting to something that might help humanity get out of its conundrum? What is its conundrum? We keep going to war with one another. And when entities like the United States, or God forbid, China, or already in its own neck of the woods, Russia, or that eternal melting pot of dissension, the Middle East, it won't go away. It won't go away. And then our own election coming up. Crazy shit. Stuff. I'm sorry if there's any young people listening. Crazy stuff. Epic things going on in the world. Who am I? What the hell are we doing? And how do we get to a better place? Well, I think understanding the equipment is a great place to start. So you're a binary system. We got past that. You're the form and the formless. Fine. And you really are. You are in this form. You are that. That's part of the reality that you are. It's just not the whole thing. The fact is that you are an eternal self, that when this body passes, you still are. And that's a kind of a sticking point, for a lot of people. They believe it or they don't believe it, and they believe it with conditions, and they think they got to earn it, and they think that they got all kinds of ideas about this eternal self that they are, and how God fits into all of this. I rarely use the G word. I'll throw it in every once in a while. I don't. The reason I'm hesitant to use it is because it's a word so charged with everything, all kinds of emotions. and identified already in people's minds. Not identified's not the that's not the right word. It's defined. The definition of that word is already defined in people's minds as all kinds of other things. The way I see the G word, I think of it more as the A word, because as it turns out, there is an allness to the picture. There is an allness to this universe. There is a glue that holds us all together. The fact that it is a holographic universe. It is a holographic universe. Mathematically, it's a holographic universe. Conceptually, you can see how it is. Within the Planck field of every proton, which every proton of every atom, of every molecule, of all of the stuff, of all of the manifesting physical material all across the universe, is a black hole. And within its Planck field is encoded the information of all of the other protons, all of the rest of what's going on in all of the rest of the universe. And it's being updated like now, as this Planck field across the universes is jiggling, is interacting with itself, is touching itself. It's getting this read, this interference pattern, that within the interference pattern is encoded all the information of all the universe. The universe is aware of itself. The universe is learning about itself. And every one of the individual points on the ground is like it's divinely autonomous in its own right. An amoeba, a single cell, is an autonomous consciousness. But then they join together with other consciousnesses and for common purpose and more common interaction and co-creation. And actually it turns out the name of the game is not competition, but rather who can collaborate with the most number of other beings for the winningest win for all of us scenario. Where's the point where we all benefit? And that's the point where we all benefit is the point where biology across the planet is supported. Now, what is my real point as I come into this space and ask this question, who am I? Because I do have a general understanding of what is the matter with us, and on the one hand, and how amazing we are on the other hand, where we've come from, where we're going, what's in our way, what storms and kerfuffles we have to look forward to in the future, both near and far. I have kind of a sense of this. I have a sense of what could get us to where we want to be faster. And I know that Abraham, if they misunderstood what I meant, and hopefully I am evincing the correct frequency and they would not misunderstand what I mean. The way to get from where you are to where you want to be is you have to love and be joyful where you are. So you can't be dissatisfied with where you are and go faster to where you want to be. Now, where I would like to be for humanity is a place where we are more loving and kind and understanding of one another, where we, generally speaking, more clearly understood our own equipment and the equipment of our fellow man, so that we would quit trying to punish and shame and guilt and hate and kill one another into some sort of pattern of order to try to punish one another into compliance and better behavior. It sort of runs along the lines of the old tongue-in-cheek adage, and the beatings will continue until morale improves. Well, morale will never, ever improve through beating. It's never going to happen, people. We must understand who we are. We're never going to get war to stop by dropping bombs on one another. And if you're someone who the bombs are dropping on, the truth is still the truth. Reality is still what reality is. And eternally, you are who you are. And the quantum field is what the quantum field is. And mankind is what they are. And I believe that all of our suffering comes from us not knowing who we are. Not knowing that we are both the eternal and the temporal, working as a team together. You are both of these things. And so blessed. We are all blessed. And yet, if we're walking around in a world where nobody understands how this works, it doesn't seem like you're blessed. It seems like you're cursed because, well, we'll just see. We'll see. Is this going to turn easily or is this going to turn hard? I know it's going to turn because turn, to everything there is a season. Turn. And the reason that's true, by the way, is because everything is spin. Everything is spin. As matter emerges across the event horizon of the 0-point energy field into being, into protons of matter, made of Plancks, because everything is made of Plancks. As it does that, as it comes across the event horizon, it's spinning. Spin is fundamental. You cannot have a manifestation without spin and all the forces that come with it, including gravity. It's because spin is fundamental. And spin is... I think that there is a single... You can imagine it as a single primordial spin. Spin coming out of spin, coming out of spin. On the one hand, every consciousness is a divinely autonomous, individuated spin. And yet, we all spring from the same one. You go down deeper into your own levels inside of your consciousness, inside of your being, as it's like through meditation. You click into deeper levels, deeper until you get to the originating spin, that place where we all are. It's universal consciousness, that point that we all share. I see both love and gravity as somehow is connected to this point that we all share. And you could think of that as a philosophical point, but at some point it's springing forth from physical reality. When I talk about discussing reality making, I want to really talk about reality, what it's really made of, how it really unfolds, and then how to attach that to my understanding of my own life and my own emotions and my own inner being and my own binary nature, my own... I am both broader consciousness, I am broader perspective, and I am my own specific perspective. We've been focusing way too much on everyone's specific perspective, and not really understanding that we all have this broader perspective. And then if we would get it straight with the, generally speaking, with the broader perspective, we could all go back to happily specializing in our specific perspective. We want to do both. We want to live in a state where we understand both the broader picture and the specific things that you specifically are looking at and or interested in. Hopefully those are the same things, because what you want to be doing is following your bliss. Ultimately, if you want to click into the way the universe organizes optimally, you have to follow your own desire, because your desire is your inner being speaking to you. How you are translating those desires, that wick of feeling that you're getting that was trying to move you towards this or that or something else, that's your inner being with its impulsive signals. How your physical brain is interpreting that, now that's a whole nother thing. It all depends on how you were raised, how you were raised to focus, what you were raised to believe about the nature of reality around you in the first place. You know, it's very likely that what's happening is that you're wanting something and you feel the pull of desires, and they're coming to you from pure spirit places. You know, desire for peace and abundance and synchronistic, harmonious interaction with everything, and love and joy and relationship and all that kind of stuff. But you're translating it into something like, yeah, if I could have that car, then I would feel free. When in actual fact, and then if you think you can't have that car because you're homeless, you know, on the street and don't have anything, and the only way you might be able to get that car is to steal it, you know, that's where those kind of bright ideas come from. What you're probably doing, you have a belief, you have a desire, and then you have a belief that you can't have that desire, and then you just leave it right there. And yet that isn't really who you are. You are a moving desire. You are a flowing light being moving forward. And if that's your source self. That's what your vibrational self is doing. Whether your physical specific self is aware of any of that or not, the question is, what are you doing? Your inner being is flowing forward with the evolution of everything around you, becoming more, becoming better, becoming... It really is getting better. You may think that it isn't, but if you could really go back in time and have a deep sense of what we used to think, what we used to believe collectively, to realize there even was a collective we in some places that there isn't now. The fabric of society was just torn asunder, you know? And now it's just scattered in pieces, and everybody is like having to deal with it individually, you know? But there used to be a place where we all kind of thought the same thing. And I'm not suggesting we go back to that, because actually the diversity is better. But it also points to a clearer recognition of who are we. We used to think we knew, and now the way it's shattered, it's like, oh, we didn't know. But look at what we really are. We're this infinitely diverse, infinitely capable, universal consciousness plugged in, amazing creature that is moving through time, you know, moving through the centuries and evolving. And look at how fashions changed and philosophies and ideas grew, and look at how we moved from theology to science-based, and science and theology sort of went separate ways. You study spirit, and I'll look at the physical world, and now we're poised at this place in time where we can't really go any farther, and unless we realize that spirit and science exist in the same world. They're aspects of the same thing, we can't really have a unified recognition of how to move forward until we add these two back together. The reason that they were separated is because the church had so much power, and science wasn't going to just get rid of the church and all of its power. But they had to concede that there were aspects of the material manifestation that their spirit understandings wasn't completely covering, like the moons of Jupiter and such. And so they went their separate ways for several hundred years. And now we are sitting at a moment in time where the only way to move forward is to recognize how those two things add together. And that's kind of what this show is about, because source energy that I speak of all the time, well, that's kind of the spirit thing. That's that vibrational formless. It's the formless. But it's made of something that you could think of having a form. It's made of Plancks. What's a Planck? It's a really infinitely small, I say infinitely, but it's not infinitely small. It has an actual mathematical number. It's not infinitely small. And actually there are three Planck measurements. I'm going to pull this up. There's the Planck length. There's actually 3 Planck units. There's length, mass, and time, and those are the formulas. A Planck is very, 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 very small. And essentially, if you want to understand it spatially, how they're coming up with this figure, it's a frequency. It's a really, really, really short length of frequency. And how you get it is you take a photon, which is quite a bit bigger than a Planck, actually. You take a photon, which is very, 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 very small. It's a unit of light. There's a photon going at the speed of light, which, by the way, photons tend to go at the speed of light. A photon going at the speed of light crossing its own diameter. I believe that it's something like that gets you to the Planck unit. It's really, really small. It's so small that to imagine how many Plancks are in a proton. Remember I claimed that the Planck field of every proton has encoded within it all of the information of all of the rest of the protons and all of the universe. All of the matter in all of the universe is encoded in the Planck field of every proton. So how many Plancks are there in a proton? A proton is very, 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 very small. It's the mass at the center of every atom of matter. Really, 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 really small. Very, very small. You can't see it. I don't even think you can visually see it with your eyes with an electron microscope. It's really, really small. However, there are a lot of Plancks in a proton. If you took every one of those Plancks and made it big enough to see, let's make it the size of a grain of sand, which is actually pretty big. But make every one of those Plancks the size of a grain of sand. Now how big is that proton? Well, it's now from the sun to Alpha Centauri. Make that a sphere, fill it with sand. That's how many Plancks are in a proton. That's how come all of the mass of all of the universe can be encoded across the Planck field of every proton. There's an awful lot of Plancks in every proton. So, anyway, that's a little bit of the mathematical stuff. Sometimes I get a little more, my discussion of who am I gets a little more into we are the Planck field kind of a discussion. Today, I don't know what I did today. I think it was more we are the binary system. We are the form and the formless coming into form. And as such, we truly are both our inner being and our outer conventional self. We are a system, but we are not isolated. We are co-creating with every other being on the planet. And we are a field phenomenon deeply embedded with the patterns of everything around us. Now, you don't actually have to consciously think about that all the time. If you were doing a good job of following the guidance of your inner being, you'd be doing all right. And how do you follow the guidance of your inner being? Well, what the object of the exercise is to resonate with your inner being. You're in your optimal state of allowing good things to come to you. When you're resonating with your inner being, you have access to universal consciousness and all of the best ideas. You are collaborating and co-creating all the way up to completely consciously with everything around you. You can get into that state. That's the optimal. Well, how do you do that? You resonate with your inner being. How do you resonate with your inner being? Well, understand what your inner being is doing. And understand what your inner being is made of. Your inner being is made up of pure vibrational, pure vibration, positive forward. It's reflecting something. It's not, in a way, there almost isn't such a thing as a negative vibration. That is, when you think about negative vibes, you're talking about something else, actually. You're talking about a way of looking at it. But the vibration itself, it's just a vibration. It's a vibration, and your inner being is vibrationally in touch with all that existeth around you in physicality and is dancing with it vibrationally. It knows where everything is because it's in touch with this allness channel, this holographic interference pattern coming in across all of your atomic structure. So all you need to do is, okay, I'm going to take some of this from Abraham, but I absolutely believe this to the core of my being. Your inner being is only positive, only feels good about the situation because it can see that all is well. It is in a situation where it can see the Planck field. It knows that it is manifesting whatever it wants to, that desire is the core of all of it, that it is the engine that's driving all of it, the desire for more, for better, for free, for joy, for love, for fun, for abundance, for that desire is running the whole thing. And it's all Plancks that can form into whatever. Nothing to be afraid of there. It knows who you are. It knows who your neighbor is. It knows what the grass is. It knows that we're all evolving, that we're all moving forward, that it's all okay. Why would it ever feel a negative emotion? Why would it ever feel a negative emotion? It doesn't, because it knows what's really happening. You know, it's in touch with the holographic nature of everything. As all of the parts, all of the points, all of the Plancks everywhere, whether they're spinning in a proton or whether they're just there as the plasma of the universe, all of the Plancks are jiggling together. They're communicating with one another. They're uploading their particular information up to the whole. And the whole is downloading its information down to all the parts. And the universe is alive. When you understand how true all of this is in actual materiality, you know that the universe knows who you are, knows where you are, loves you, could not do it without you. It is your part to go into the specifics and light up some part of the grid where you are. Light it up. Pay attention to how you feel, because I did allude to the how do you resonate with your inner being? Well, your inner being always feels good. So if you don't, it's because you're taking a thought about something that's making you feel bad. Because your inner being can see the suffering and injustice too. It's just not looking at that. It can see it, but it's not looking at that. What it's looking at is who you really are and what's really happening. And it's okay. It really is okay. We live in a universe where it's going to be all right. Even if some things tumble down around us, I promise you that good things are... I was going to say one thing. Back to this this picture. This one. So there's a moment between patterns. Say you've got one frequency going on the plate and all that granular medium has formed a picture, a pattern. When the frequency of the field changes, and that pattern changes from one pattern to another pattern, there's a moment where neither pattern fully exists. Some parts of the old pattern are going to still be in the new pattern, but some of the old pieces are going to change to different things. They're going to fall away. They're not going to be there anymore. Like, we still use roads, but now we're cars instead of horses and buggies. You know, there's parts of it that are still there and parts of it that aren't still there. Yeah, we still use banks, but now they're formed this way. Or, yeah, we do this, but now da-da-da. There are parts of it that are still there and other parts of it that are falling away. And sometimes in the between patterns, it looks like chaos, but it isn't really. And if you look at our moment in time like that, knowing that we live in a vibrational universe, and the vibration of humanity, I think it's rising. I think consciousness is rising. I think that the appetite for being able to understand even this discussion I'm having right now, 10 years ago, I don't think that there would have been hardly anybody out there who would even understand what I'm saying, let alone me being in a place where I can say this stuff. It's rising. We're getting better. When I first started thinking about this stuff, back in the 80s, back when Joseph Campbell and The Power of Myth came out, you know, and he's saying all this stuff that was like unifying religious ideas, you know, putting it under one umbrella and calling it the mythology of humanity. You know, my eyes just popped and I went, yes, that's what I've been thinking, but I had no words to say and no thoughts to, you know, support this. We've come a long way since then. When Joseph Campbell was talking to Bill Moyers on the show, he talks about people, Bill Moyers is the one who says this. People are openly talking about, they're openly using the C word. Did he say the C word? Talking about consciousness as though that was brand new, you know? People only talked about materiality, the rolling form of the manifestation. What shape is it in right at this moment? What is the situation? What is the state of reality? That's the only thing anybody ever talked about. And really, the discussion has opened way up. If it hadn't, I would not be in a position where I could be making a show where there's even a prayer of anybody who might be listening to me, who might be resonating with this, who might be going, yeah, hot damn, you're onto something, girl, you know? I believe that all of the problems of humanity, you could either say are caused by or could be greatly ameliorated. I keep using that word. I don't know why. By us understanding who we are. Us not understanding how the equipment works causes us to way misunderstand our negative emotions about anything, you know? My negative emotions about where the United States is going politically, for instance. There's an awful lot of angry people out there willing to angrily follow a very angry man who is going to lead to a great deal of chaos and destruction. But you know what? There's a lot of stuff that I see, institutions and physicality, in the way of the future that I think humanity is heading for. And we either dismantle it gently and kindly and lovingly and move on intentionally to our iteration of our future, or we resist, and then that which cannot be sustained comes down, in a little more rubble, if you will. Now, I personally would rather have the peaceful way, but it's like JFK said, I think he's the one that said this, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I don't want anybody taking this out of context and saying that I am advocating for violent revolution, because I'm totally not. But when you see people around you engaged in that kind of activity, understand that that's where it came from. That's where it comes from. Your neighbor is your unknown self made visible. There is no us and them. You cannot point your finger out at that group of misbehaving people over there and say, those are the ones responsible. The ones who keep suppressing those over unity energy devices, the ones who control the fossil fuels. Those are the ones. They are the ones who are the They own the private islands and the billion-dollar yachts. Those things are magnificent. Those yachts, the really, really expensive ones, the ones with the dual heliports on them. Not to mention the detachable motorboat. Not to mention the onboard jet skis, and they are just amazing things. Human beings are the most amazing creatures. The things that we can create. And you know what? It is not a pie of scarcity. We do not live in a paradigm of scarcity. We live in a universe of such magnificent abundance, such wonderment, such possibility, such malleability. That is truly my ultimate message. We are amazing creatures in an amazing universe. We just need to have a clearer understanding of who we are and how the system functions. This formless, this quantum field coming into being. It's running on, our inner being is guiding us. We are beings of light. How we feel is more important than what it looks like. So anybody who is operating on, it feels really bad, but I know I'm doing this for my country. I am making this terrible sacrifice of enduring this horrific pain, but I'm doing it for my country. Stop doing that for your country, because if you are in tremendous pain and you keep doing it anyway, you are not paying attention to your guidance, inner and outer. Emotional pain is especially the one you shouldn't be indulging in. I'm not saying put your head in the sand and pretend like things that exist don't exist. I'm saying take a broader perspective view of it. Find a thought that so that you can look at these things without it bringing you to your knees, because ultimately, at the very ground root of all things, ultimately, all is well. All is very, very well. You are made of this cosmic divine plasma that all things are made of. You are holographically one with the whole thing. You are known, you are loved, you are supported. But you gotta turn your loving face in order to feel that love that the universe is giving you and all of us. I'm going to talk more about that on other days. Some days I will be more gentle. Some days I'm going to be more poetic. Sometimes I'm going to be more pedantic. You know, sometimes I'm going to be more, I don't know. We'll see who am I? Who am I? That's another question. Down the road, after I've spoken about this other subject for the longest time, people are going to ask, well, who the hell are you? And how did you come to this? I got a lot of things to say about that, actually. I've thought about my story and I've wondered about it. I wondered about it as it unfolded. And then looking back at it, I scratch my head sometimes and go, huh, look at that. That's really interesting. You can do the same to your life. All of us dovetail with one another. We all co-create a wholeness that we can't get away from. You cannot get away from the allness that you are. People like to do subtraction consciousness. Oh, if only that group of people right there was not part of the picture, then we could all live happily ever after. It's the ultimate subtraction consciousness. You know, that final solution of the Nazis, that was the ultimate in subtraction consciousness. You cannot subtract anything from the field. It all creates a magnificent and beautiful, harmonious oneness. And if you're just looking at disparate parts of it, you may not see that oneness. And if you want to find your way to your wholeness and us to our wholeness, you gotta take a different tack, perhaps. So I have now gone past the 1.5 hour mark. I have come to realize that ultimately the whole thing of what I'm trying to say about who am I, who are we, where did we come from, where are we going, what are we made of, what does it mean, how do I make sense of my larger culture, you know, my greater people, both locally and globally, my species. What are we going to do about us? You know? How do we get to a place where we are harmoniously dancing with this beautiful, beautiful, abundant planet? We're going to talk more about abundance and lack and all of those concepts because our thoughts about them is actually what's creating our reality about them. We are creating our own our thoughts and our feelings are guiding the creation of humanity, where we're going and how we do everything we do. As an individual cell in the body of humanity, I'm going to keep coming back into this space every day and talking about it. And eventually, someday, when I get more confident in my ability to hold this space, as well as my technological abilities to, manage a connected conversation with multiple human beings dialing in, asking me questions, and us having a discussion about who are we, where could we be going, from a positive perspective. Because I think humanity ultimately is going great places. It's just what we happen to have at the moment on the ground is standing between where we are and where we're going. And it only stands in our way when we don't know who we are. When we do understand who we are and how this is unfolding, now we can move towards that future we're all looking for, that one of freedom and abundance and peace on earth, goodwill towards men, for heaven's sakes, already. And so, with that, I'm going to leave you for the day. I will be back tomorrow, for sure. I hope that this recording did not devolve into static and horror, in which case I've got to come back and Groundhog Day it tomorrow. Otherwise, I can build on this. I can build on this discussion and we can just keep going. So, until tomorrow, may the source be with you.